Hey, I'm Alicia, your non-monogamous relationship coach. Joining me today on Nope, We're Not Monogamous is Anne Russo, a licensed clinical social worker, a therapist, and a non-monogamy advocate. Anne's sharing her insights on tackling jealousy, practicing enthusiastic consent, and embracing self-love for a more empowered sex life. If you're feeling lost navigating jealousy in non-monogamous relationships, then you're so not alone. The struggle is real, especially when our social expectations clash with your desire for empowerment and healthy connections. But imagine turning those challenges into opportunities for growth. If you're ready to challenge what you thought you knew about relationships and gain some practical advice on navigating non monogamy, then this is an episode you don't want to miss. Let's jump in.
Beep.
Yeah. But I do want to welcome you to the show to Nope, We're Not Monogamous. I'm really happy to have you here.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me on. It is a pleasure.
Yeah, totally. Do me a favor, real quick. Tell
Yes.
tell the listeners just a little
hmm
blurb about who you are. No pressure.
I, yeah,
And go.
here we go. Um, and the blurb is I'm a licensed clinical social worker, I'm a therapist, and I run a practice of therapists that are schooled in working with non monogamous couples, non monogamous people, um, any version of non-monogamy, the umbrella, right? And then I myself do consulting to help therapists work with folks that are non-monogamous because it's just not a thing that therapists are clear on. And I also am currently getting approved for CEU trainings for therapists to talk about all things non-monogamy, sex positive, religion and sexuality, all the stuff that we don't get in school.
That is amazing.
Thank you. It's I think it's just needed. And on a personal note, I grew up in a non-monogamous household.
You
So
did?
that yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah. So it's not just about oh, I think these folks need help with just being able to go to therapy and not having to be burnt out just explaining their lives, right? But as much as I've seen it firsthand, what that can look like.
Yeah. It's super needed. I love that you're educating other therapists because I all too often hear from people. We were seeing a therapist, but their suggestion was we just close our relationship.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And so many clients that I work with will say going to other therapists has been so exhausting. They might have been really good therapists, but it's so exhausting to have to explain all the dynamics and the understanding and the therapist moving past their bias and their misconception. So it becomes like all this additional work for the client,
Yeah.
which is terrible because you're there to work on the stuff you need to work on. You shouldn't have to educate your therapist.
Yeah.
So I'm really dedicated to giving people that space and telling therapists, hey, guess what? Just because you say you can work on relationships doesn't mean you understand the intricacies of all types of relationships.
Uh-huh.
You don't know what you don't know, right? So let's
100%.
get folks out there. Let me take on the burden of doing the training so folks can go and get their therapy and feel safe doing so.
Yes. 100.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Good. And I think there's something, I had an assistant working on a lot of my stuff for a couple of years, and she's monogamous, but she kept coming back to me and going, everything you say is just really good relationship advice. And I'm like, yeah, because it's not that different.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny because I've run some groups to help people that are starting to explore non-monogamy. And at the end of the group, they were like, this group has been the best in teaching me how to communicate and how to be authentic and how to know my own needs and communicate those needs and what enthusiastic consent looks like. And it was just like, they're like, this isn't I'm just applying this
Yeah.
to all aspects of my life, but I happen to learn it in this class about, a non-monogamy. So I
Uh-huh.
thought, like, yes, everyone should learn about how to be in a non-monogamous relationship so they can be in a healthy relationship, ironically. Like,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how that works.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think like if therapists or just anybody working with relationships started, if you start with a more open framework, that
Yeah.
then people can close down to what, like narrow the field to what works for them, but you have all the information. It makes so much more sense.
Yes, absolutely. It's really when a client comes in, and most of the time I work with people that are beginning to explore non-monogamy,
Mhm.
not so much people that have been doing it for a while. And one of the main things that we really talk about is communication.
Mhm.
And then communication around understanding their needs. Then we formulate what non-monogamy means for them, and
Yes.
then what it means for their relationship dynamic. So it's not, it's interesting how even when they come in, they have these preconceived ideas. Well, in order for me to be successful in this is how I have to do it. And it's like, no, that's not how you have to do it. This is about really being authentic to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what do you really want? Not what you think is on the menu.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So it when they realize that even in the way that I practice non-monogamy doesn't have to be exactly how maybe my if I have a uh, oh my gosh, I forgot the term, like a living partner that you're like, the partner that you live with,
Yeah.
and you're really like building your life with this person. It doesn't have to look the same way, each other's way of doing non-monogamy,
Yeah. Yeah.
as long as you're both so it's like there's all kinds of like different scenarios, and so that was the main piece that we look at first. you
Mhm.
know
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Imagine trying to shove everybody into the same box. Yeah, you can. That would be monogamy, as it's presented to us in the US, right?
Uh-huh. Well, it's really
Yeah.
funny. I always tell people, I'm like, okay, so let's start with, before you define non-monogamy, let's define monogamy for you. And they almost always have different answers.
I love that. That's a really cool approach.
Uh-huh. Like, what is monogamy for you and for you? And what, like what all is in there? Is there cuddling involved? Is there intimacy of any sort involved? Is there, right? Like what is okay in
Yes,
your monogamous relationship?
absolutely. And again, back to the communication. I know it's so interesting because people say, I feel like I'm being cheated on if someone has an emotional connection with someone else, or someone has a sexual connection but not the emotional so
Uh-huh.
it's yeah, like clearly defining those parameters for yourself
Yeah.
and your relationships is so that's the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understanding yourself, that's the real work.
Just the lifelong work of understanding yourself.
Yes, 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 the never ending journey,
Uh-huh.
right,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even the way that people participate in non-monogamy changes.
Mhm.
And I think that that's an important piece too. Like, how do we even begin to describe non-monogamy without the caveat of you change, things change, you have to communicate, you have to be open to the idea of things changing, what's coming up for you. It's so much more than just saying I'm not monogamous.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it's like, it affects the whole system, right? Like oftentimes people think they're going to open their relationship sexually. They're like, we're
Yes,
opening up, we're having sex with other people. And I'm like, but that's not all. You're not just opening a window in your house. Like you have to like tear it down and rebuild a whole new house that has way more openings, doors and windows and crawl spaces or
yes.
whatever. Because like any change is going to affect the whole thing.
Exactly, exactly. So exactly. I mean, just I just love what you're saying because all I think about is communicating, 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 communicating. People grow and change no matter what kind of relationship you're in. This is being insightful to your growth and your
Yeah.
change and being able to communicate that to your partners, then being able to communicate it back to you. So to me, like you were saying earlier, this is just about how to have a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm. 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 Exactly.
Ships. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Ships, right? So if we can all kind of just get on this page, I think we would have a happier society. Not meaning open relationships, but the way we're communicating about our
Yeah.
relationships.
100%. 100%. So what does non-monogamy mean for you?
For me, it means that's a great. You know, I think it changes.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be really honest with you, I think it changes. I think growing up, I thought it meant just sexual.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that it can mean the depth of an emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
It can be both of those things. So gosh, I guess I would say that for me, it is when you allow yourself
Mm-hmm.
to explore deeper connections past friendship connections, whether it be physical, spiritual, mental, emotional connections.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think those things can happen to us. We can choose to cut them off,
Yeah.
right? And say, no, I'm monogamous. And that's what this means. But if your feelings arise past that space, or if you have a sexual desire and you're acting on that sexual desire, I think that's when we're moving more into the non monogamy
Yeah.
territory. But again, that's for me. That's not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. It does feel like almost anything that doesn't fit into the monogamous box, which is like kind of defined but kind of not, right?
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's like kind of defined. I'm always like, okay, so if monogamy is just like sex between two people, is it like if you're only having sex with one person, is it like forever or at a time or in a day or in a week? Like
Yeah.
right?
You're monogamous for that 2 hours.
Uh-huh. 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 And then I remember someone was saying to me, I was kind of talking about ethical consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, and someone said to me, well, it's all polyamory. They were like, I fall in love with people all the time, whether it's a 15-minute meeting or a one night stand, or they're like, I fall in love with all sorts of people. I was like,
Yeah.
huh,
I
interesting.
hear that too. I mean, I totally hear that too.
Yeah.
I it's boy, I'm telling you, no, no. I mean that's real talk because I
Yeah.
see people. I have connections that run very, very deep. Does that enter into a non-monogamous space? I mean, I don't know. I
Right.
guess it depends on who you ask,
Yeah.
right? And even I think for some folks, the division of sex versus the emotional connection and what does it mean there, and I don't it's okay. How many times I've heard it's okay if my girlfriend hooks up with another girl but we're still monogamous. I mean,
Yep.
there's so like, right?
Yep.
So it's who's to say really what is the correct, it's too subjective.
Yeah. Or we're emotionally monogamous, but not sexually, or we're, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We put some
Is it
guardrails up somewhere.
yeah, it seems to me that as you're talking about this, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is how people are relating to others, and we're just trying to find words because we're human beings we're trying to put ourselves in a box.
Uh-huh.
But at the end of the day, it really is just relating. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I
because I
love
don't
it.
even know how you would begin to, yeah, like, I mean, I don't even know how you would begin to do this. This situation is okay over here. You're still monogamous because you're very emotionally attached to this person, and I don't feel threatened.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel threatened over here. Is this all of a sudden something that's not okay? And why is that? Like, I think you can see there's so many potential scenarios of what things mean.
Yeah.
that I think we just I feel I guess for me, I guess I'm just gonna have to stick to how people are relating to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It all comes down to like communication and agreements and like who's
Yeah,
who's in the relationship and what do they want out of it.
exactly. And if you are someone who's, very autonomous and you don't have, you know, um, maybe you just have people that you're dating or whatever that might look like. I think that you really then have to know yourself and be able to communicate that to anyone that you're involved with, because I think sometimes what can get lost is people forget they're also impacting other people outside of just themselves,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Or their primary partner, and it's, well, no, these are other people too. It's not, well, I want us to go find someone to sleep with. Like, that's still a person
Yeah.
with feelings and thoughts and ideas and relational dynamics as well. So I think, to consider all the people involved is very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And like what do they want out of it? What are they
Yeah,
adding to the
exactly.
list of things that are possible?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's the people relating to people as authentically as possible, trying to break down these norms
Mhm.
that do not fit for a lot of us.
Mhm. 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 Yes. Yes. I love it. It's amazing.
I know. I'm just like, just musing about like, I
Uh-huh.
really mean. I asked that question. I felt like a deer in headlights because I thought that could go a million different
So
ways.
many. So many.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I love it because I get so many different answers too, and they're like none of them are wrong. Like
yeah. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool thing for your listeners to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, when I started the podcast, that was my thought was like there's a lot of now these days there's a lot of resources out there. There's books, there's podcasts, there's YouTube videos.
Mhm.
There's a lot of places to go and get like how-tos and 101s. And everything I have read and that I look at or listen to or watch or whatever, and I'm like, okay, cool, great advice. How did you figure it out? How did you get there? What did you go through? Right? Like, what puts you
Mhm.
up here and me down here? But like, not really, but that's kind of my perception because like you've got this thing figured out
Yeah.
and you're giving me advice. But like, what happened before you had that advice to give me? That's what I wanted to know. And so I was like, I just want to
Mhm.
bullshit with people and find out like, how did we figure this all out? Because none of us know how to do this from the get go.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think, I did have a unique opportunity for sure to understand love in a more freeing way.
Mm.
I was always taught that love is not finite, and that was helpful. It's not that everything worked out beautifully. There was a lot because I was in a non-monogamous household, but society, of course, is very monogamous. It was confusing to try to rectify that within myself.
Yeah.
Like, what did that mean? What was more authentic to me? So I mean, there's still like a lot of work to be done as an individual, even if you're raised in a non-monogamous, very open household.
That is really fascinating, actually. Yes, absolutely. And I get so many questions from parents who are polyamorous or non-monogamous who are like, "What about the kids?" Right? And I have 3 kids that are all teenagers, and I've been openly non-monogamous for 10 plus years. So they have grown up with it and have had their questions. And I'm like, kids don't come into the world assuming monogamy. It's the thing we teach them, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody sits down with your kids and goes, "Okay, it's time for me to tell you, mom and dad are monogamous. We
Yes.
only sleep with each other and we only love each other." And nobody tells them that.
No, totally, totally, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I always wonder, like, as my kids get older, like what's their way going to be? How are they gonna reconcile all that? So it's really fascinating to hear, like, growing up in a non-monogamous house and still going, okay, but what's for me?
Yes, and the opportunities didn't feel as foreign, I guess.
Mm.
Is a good
Hmm.
way to put that. I saw the whole spectrum, I felt like, or a big piece of the spectrum.
Sure.
And I was able to kind of say, okay. what does this mean? Do I like this? So I wasn't afraid to explore what could work or not work, and and the changes over time. So I think that it was a real gift. And I think parents don't do their kids any favors if they try to hide from
Yeah.
people or their kids
Yeah.
about it's just it's more confusing for the kid, because then eventually they will find out.
Yeah.
And then there's like this almost a shame, or you're almost teaching them this is something to feel bad about or feel shameful about,
Yeah.
versus like this is just another way that people can express love and intimacy in relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't want to teach our kids to have shame.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
So so but we but I think teaching them like this is what works for us, it may not work for you,
Yeah.
but you get the opportunity to see and find out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I love that because the thing that has been coming to mind for me a lot lately is especially talking to people who are like newly opening up or who are the people I work with are usually in transition of some sort, right? Like whether they're new to non-monogamy or they're transitioning from like swinging to polyamory, or right, they're shifting to a new relationship paradigm,
Sure,
and
yeah.
they're like, but what about other people, our kids, our family, our friends, and with I want to say like legal considerations aside, or like at the risk of like losing a job or something, like if you
Sure.
feel like you're doing something wrong, like you actually feel like it's bad and you shouldn't be doing it, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
You like start pull that
Yeah.
apart first. Like if this is the thing you
Yeah.
want and there's a part of you that's like, I don't think it's wrong and I'm scared of judgment, like,
Yes.
right? Like what's going on there? Do you feel guilt and shame, or are you, scared of like for your survival kind of things?
That's a really good point, and I think that we're going to see a lot and have seen a lot of the guilt and shame,
Yeah.
because that's what's this. I mean, we're fighting a very big machine that we were all born into.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage people to confront it and know that it's okay if you're experiencing that.
Mhm.
It's like you're coming out.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of coming out, right? And you're going to have to make some decisions, of course, like you said, based on safety and things of that nature, but process through it. Those are understandable feelings,
Yeah.
but try not to stay there.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't wanna
Yeah.
spend the next 20 years feeling ashamed. That's silly.
Yeah, I mean, that's sad, right? And
Yeah.
we know, most of us remember one go around here. Like, when your time is up, do you want to have lived someone else's life, or do you want to have lived yours?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Amazing.
Yeah.
I am curious. I had like 27 questions I wanted to ask you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
28 probably actually. Um, I am curious about, let me ask you this one.
Okay.
Working with non-monogamous folks, what would you say is the biggest like challenge that comes up, or the biggest struggle?
Jealousy.
Yeah, jealousy. Yeah.
Jealousy.
Yeah.
That is a hard one. And it
Mhm.
comes up for almost everybody.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's not a sign that non monogamy doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important thing. It might not, or it might, but work through to understand what this jealousy is about.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work attached to how that shows up, why it's showing up. It's usually connected to some level of attachments from the past. Again, the indoctrination of what it means to be in a relationship and ownership of people, rather than, you know, people have choices, and so there's a lot of components to it for sure. But jealousy, number one, and sometimes it hits people where they least expect it. I've had
Mm,
clients who are totally fine and going along and no issues of jealousy, and then, oh, you brought your other partner to the house when I wasn't home. Boom, explosion of jealousy,
yeah.
right? So we don't necessarily know how it's going to show up, but the ability to work through it is the key.
Yes. 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 Yeah. That was my hardest. Absolutely. I was like 100% don't want to be monogamous again. I was married for a long time monogamously, got divorced and was like, well, don't want to do that again. And I was like, and I'm a pretty jealous person. I'm going to have to figure that out in the
How did
trenches.
how yeah, how did that go?
Oh, it was terrible, but also great.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those
Yeah.
things where you go, like, uh, one, I was aware of it, right? Like I was like, I know this is going to be a challenge. So a big part of it for me was knowing what it was that I wanted, like what the ultimate goal was, in the face of my husband being like, we could just close this. Like, we don't have to be non monogamous. I love you so much. And I was like, that's actually not what I want. That's going to leave me really bored and frustrated and back in a place where I don't want to be. So I'm actually just willing to feel this discomfort and move through it. Like,
Yes.
so knowing
Yeah.
what I wanted, I think was key. Because
Yes.
when I was
Yes.
like in a ball on the floor crying, I was like, no, we're not closing. That's not
Yes.
what I
Oh my
want.
gosh, you sound like some of my clients. But that's real. It's like, no, I want this. I'm freaking out right now.
Uh-huh.
I'm jealous. I'm angry. I'm going through a whole lot of different emotions, but I still know I want this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a cool place to be, though.
Yeah. That's why I'm always telling people get clarity about what you want. Why are you doing this? Like if you're doing it because I don't know, it might be fun and I'm bored, you're probably not going to have the wherewithal to like push through the uncomfortable parts because why?
Yeah.
It's hard. You could just
Yeah.
go back to status quo where things were just easy and boring that caused you to want to open
Yes.
up in the first place or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something to
Absolutely.
be said for comfort.
Absolutely. And it's all good. I mean, whatever people do is fine as long as it's consensual, and
Yeah.
it's working for them and it's authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's always the line that I'm going with
Yeah.
my clients.
Yeah. The
So no matter how jealous they might be or how upset they might be or they can't figure out certain little hitches in what this means, I'll never say to close the relationship.
yeah.
That will never come out of my mouth because that's not what they're there for. They're there to work through these things so
Yeah.
they can maintain their non-monogamous relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
The other thing that once I worked through the initial bits of like just jealous because we're not monogamous, just jealous because there's another person, and like figured out like, oh, this is just a lot of my insecurities, uh, right? Then it was pieces that felt like my identity. Like, what does it mean
Interesting.
for me to be the wife? Well, if another woman is making my husband's lunch, which I don't want to make his fucking lunch, that was not a thing I wanted, but all of a sudden someone else was making his lunch and I was like, "Wait, that's my job." No, I don't want that job, but that's what I'm supposed to do. That
Yeah.
was hard.
Yes.
Oh, and then when my girlfriend started cleaning our house, we have a girlfriend in common for like 8
Mhm.
years, plus other partners, but she started cleaning our house. Oh my God, that's amazing. Who doesn't want that? And yet, here my nervous system was so activated and like I'm being replaced. I'm useless. I have no point in like, why am I even here? And I'm like, I don't believe any of that. And yet, here I am
Oh,
freaking out.
yeah. 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 And really having to work to regulate
Oh,
yourself
yeah,
and to understand where those messages were coming from. Because, yeah, who doesn't want their girlfriend to clean up their house?
right? Like,
Thank you, honey.
yes.
Right? Appreciate
Thank you. This is
that.
amazing. And also, don't put my shoes there. Yeah, that so like those were like the big pieces. And then and there's the like figuring it out, right? The logically like unwinding or the programming that we have and like what's underneath this, what's really going on, what insecurities are being hit, and then like building up lots of self-love, which for me looked like lots of masturbation.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do to get that self love going.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, literally make love to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
just self
Feel
love, like in a
comfortable.
literal way.
Yeah. Yeah. And feel safe
Uh huh.
and comfortable in your own body
Yeah.
and in your own pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it feels like when we talk about like loving yourself, it feels like this ethereal kind of this, I don't know, mystery thing that you see on Instagram or something. But like, what does it actually mean? And I'm like, okay, so make it literal. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. What does it mean? Yes. Like, what does it mean for you?
yeah. Yeah. Or like, what?
But the body comfort around your own sex and sexuality, I
Mm,
think is extremely important for all people.
yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I did for
Love it.
jealousy. What do you have people do? Have you had to deal
Hey,
with a jealousy?
so growing up, I did not see jealousy.
Hmm.
Very little. So I was raised in a gay male household with my mom. There's a whole other dynamic. There's a lot going on there. But between my dad and his primary partner, they've been together since I was 5, and I never really saw them jealous with what the other one was doing. They had a very similar way they operated, and then as they got older it changed a little bit.
Sure.
About So they actually practice non-monogamy very differently.
Hmm.
um there was only one time that I can't even say if it was jealousy. I don't know if that would really be fair. I think maybe there was some boundary issues
Mm,
that needed to be addressed, but they were addressed.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I never saw it myself in my own practice when I was younger, because I don't practice non-monogamy now, believe it or not.
Yeah.
My partner and I, we talk about these things in great depth. So I don't know what that means for our lives.
Sure.
And I think that's the other thing too. Like, it's like things are never on or off the table. It's just like we're just going to keep talking and talking and talking. So how are we here? What's going on with this? But when I was younger, I tried it, but I tried it in a very confusing way
Sure.
of not really knowing, understanding myself, and not being able to deal with my own attachment issues and things like that. So I don't think it really manifested in the best way,
Yeah.
but it taught me a lot about
Yes.
what I would do differently in the future, and things that worked or didn't work, and the people that you're choosing to engage with also very, very important, because sometimes people will say they're okay with certain things because they like you,
Yes.
not really recognizing that maybe that's not really going to work for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's huge, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like partner
Yes.
compatibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, and not all the time, but I've seen people try to steal a primary partner because they actually want to be monogamous, so I mean there's a lot of dynamics at play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a rough one. Um, I see it, and I can like with my clients, I see it, and I can usually kind of see it coming, and yet I
Yeah.
want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, right?
Fair.
Like I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but man, that person, I really don't think they want to be non-monogamous. Hmm.
Yes. 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 And when that happens, how do you handle it when you see it? Putting you a little bit on the spot, sorry.
No, I love that. That's a really good question because like I what I wind up going to, so what I always tell people is I'm not working in service of your relationship. I'm working in service of the human beings in front of me and what is best for them individually. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's what I do. I go, okay, for you, Like, what is this for you? What is it that you want? What is it you desire? What are your boundaries actually? And then are
Yes.
you upholding them? Or are you going
Yes.
along to get along? Are you
Yes.
saying yes to
Yeah.
things that you don't actually want to say yes to?
100.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And when you
100%.
can rein all that in, then the rest just falls out as it's going to.
100%.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really, yes. What is it? Are you going along to get along? What do you really want? What does that mean? Because I have seen a lot of cases where it doesn't seem like one partner really wants, if this is when people are opening up, a
Yeah.
monogamous relationship, one partner may think they have to go along with this. And, there have been situations where people have ended relationships
Yeah.
because, they just really wanted something different.
Mhm.
And that sometimes is just what it's going to be, as difficult as it might be in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Ah, amazing. Um, pardon me. Oh, you're working on a book.
Oh, yes.
You're working on a book that I am curious about, actually. I'm very curious about.
Oh, well, I'm working on a book about basically cis female
Uh-huh.
sexuality.
Yeah.
And we dive into social context, but I also dive into religious context, specifically Christian context.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I go through the foundations of Christianity, how we got here. And then I talk about different ways that we can empower ourselves to know ourselves more sexually. And I have exercises and examples of client interactions using different types of therapy and some of my own experiences as well,
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah. That's amazing. When I went to school to get my coaching certification, I went to school thinking I was going to be a women's sexual empowerment coach. Like that was my goal. That's what I was doing.
Oh, this is great. How did what happened? Or you're still doing it? You're still doing that too. I have no doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was, I had gotten divorced. I had two kids. I'd been married since I was 23, and had very few orgasms. And I was like, I want more orgasms, and I want more sex, and all of these things. And so I was
Yeah.
moving in that direction. And so I went to school to be a women's sexual empowerment coach. And over the course of that, year and a half of school, I was also becoming non-monogamous, polyamorous, exploring all of that. And it was like all I was talking about. And I was like, oh, actually, there's a thing here that like I really like talking about. I love talking about relationships. I love talking about non-monogamy, but like polyamory and swinging and kink and like all the things, and where they all overlap, especially. And yeah, so I wound up working with non-monogamous folks. But also like a big part of that is sexual empowerment because it's all intertwined,
Yes, it totally,
Yeah.
totally. It's when I try to describe what is it that I'm doing exactly. Sometimes it's hard because I feel like it's all an overlap, but I'm trying to, condense it into a sentence
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to some form of sexual empowerment all the way around, and like a self acceptance, and being able to break any barriers that we have that are not healthy surrounding religion.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like trying to navigate a lot of those things. So like with the CE trainings, like one of the trainings that I'm going to do is like how kink can help PTSD.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So like things that maybe a therapist isn't going, this is great. This person's doing kink. Like they won't even ask them about their sex lives a lot of times. Therapists are very shy about speaking about sex in general.
Yeah.
So that's why this is the agenda that I'm kind of like, hey, let's look at this stuff. We have to be able to talk about these things with our clients.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's like you stepped into that realm of empowerment, and this is just another avenue of empowerment.
Yes, 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 yes. It's almost like empowerment. It's funny that we have to say sexual empowerment because truly true empowerment should not exclude sexuality. Like,
Totally.
why
100%.
are we doing these things and excluding a really integral part of humanity?
I know.
Yeah.
That's so true. But that's where I think that like religious piece unfortunately comes in.
Mhm.
And if you get the opportunity or like my book, when it's done,
Yeah.
you will just see the level of the indoctrination from go. I
Yeah.
mean, the way the religion was written
Yeah.
was anti-woman.
Yes.
Like it is truly wild. So then we see these repercussions 2000 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Generation after generation after
Oh,
storytelling, storytelling, storytelling to
yes.
like what is that game we played as kids where you whisper in each other's ears and see what the story comes out at
Oh,
the end?
I know the
It's
one you're
like
talking
the
about.
whisper train or something. I don't remember what it's called, but it feels like that. Like the generational things that we're taught is like, well, my mom said this, and then I said this other thing, right?
Yes.
Kind of like I also have a women's program for non-monogamous women to feel more confident, and one of the things I talk about in there is how we were literally raised by women or their mothers who had to legally be financially dependent on men. And like, how could we be raised by those women and not have that influence us? Like we do tie our safety and our security in that way. Like it just
Oh,
is.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a whole section from the 1950s till now, what women's roles were, what the idea of
Hmm.
just it's more of a cultural look
Yeah.
versus the religious look. That's a separate piece. But like what was going on in movies, TV, laws, poetry, books,
Yeah.
science, what was being said.
Yeah.
It's really disgraceful,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important that we're doing this work.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. 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 Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. I
I
could
mean,
I could
it's shocking.
talk to you all day long.
Yes, I know, totally. I'm right there with you. Yeah, I mean, I just really quickly want to tell you this. When I was with my mom and she's in her 70s now, and we were watching an old TV show called Green Acres.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and in this show, it's from the 50s or the 60s. In this show, the wife her husband wants her to go to school to learn how to be a better cook. And she goes to high school. Okay. And she keeps getting in trouble. And the husband keeps coming to talk to the principal about how his wife keeps getting in trouble. And there's a final incident where she leaves the school because a male student looked at her leg and wasn't paying attention and blew up the science room. And she was the one that got in trouble and kicked out of the school for distracting the male. And I'm watching this with my mom now, keep in mind. And I'm like, wow, mom, did you see that? No recollection that that was weird, strange,
No.
misogynistic. You know what I mean? So it's like, it is in us
Yeah.
to accept this deep misogyny,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Like all of us. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, all of
All
us,
of us.
all of
Hmm.
us. Because my mom would never think in a million years that she was blind to
Yeah.
misogyny. But that to me was just so, I'm like, really? Like, hello, she's getting kicked out of school because he blew up the building because he looked at her leg. Like, this is weird.
Uh-huh.
But just did not register
Yeah.
that that was a completely misogynistic situation.
Wild.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Needed an inhaler for that one?
Uh-huh.
I did.
Yeah. 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 Oh my gosh. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to share?
No, not particularly. I mean, of course I'd like people to know they can reach out to me and check out
Absolutely.
my website and subscribe, and these classes that I'm doing for therapists, they're also for personal enrichment.
Yeah.
So people can take those classes too, and I'm more than happy to talk to people and support people.
Where do they find you?
AnnRusso.org
Awesome.
or .net. I stole both of
Good job.
those. Well, I purchased both of
Yes.
those. Yeah. And, and my LinkedIn's a good place to find me as well, Ann Russo.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think I sent you a few links to throw into the show notes.
Yeah, it'll be there. It'll be there for sure. I have one more question for you, and this does not go on the regular on the whole podcast episode. It's for our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/not monogamous. And it's the segment's called Just the Tip.
Okay.
And it's a favorite or best sex tip that you would want to share. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me and sharing your wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So good. I appreciate you sharing yours. I feel like I just had a few moments where I was like, yes, I love this. Thank you. So, yes. Yay. Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you. That was Ann Russo sharing her jaw-dropping sex tip that's got everyone buzzing. If you didn't hear it, then go to patreon.com/not monogamous and become one of our amazing show lovers or friends with benefits. And then you'll get access to Just the Tip as well. And you'll have my undying love. Bye.